This is the quiz that you're going to have tomorrow. Or maybe not. No. It is. It's not. It is. It's going to look like this. I don't know. Okay. But it does say practice quiz because I scratched out quiz right there. So who knows? Maybe it's the same identical quiz. Maybe it's modified a little. But going over it will give us a good feel for what to expect on tomorrow's quiz. So, like I said, a lot of the previous quiz is on this quiz, on tomorrow's quiz. Number one, it says f plus g of x. So that notation is simply telling us to add f and g together. So your f of x function is 3x plus 1. Your g of x function is x minus 2. And they want us to add them together, so I want to put a plus sign between them. Now, technically, you're supposed to put them in parentheses, right? But the plus sign is between them, so there's nothing to distribute. Even if you distribute the plus sign, nothing changes. So you are able to add the 3x and the x together, and you're going to get 4x. And you are able to add the 1 and the negative 2 together. That positive 1, that negative 2, you're going to get a negative 1. So your answer for number 1 is 4x minus 1. And you would write it right here, 4x minus 1. Moving on to number 2. Are we cool with number 2, or should I explain number 2? Explain? Okay, so that one says h minus g of x. That notation is telling you to take your h of x function minus your g of x function. So your this is f of x, g of x, h of x. So take your h of x function minus your g of x function. So you're going to take your h of x, which is x plus 5, and you're going to say minus your g of x, which happens to be x minus 2. So let's actually subtract these guys. First, you're going to distribute that minus sign to each of those. And of course, you're going to have a negative x plus 2. So now it's just a question of combining like terms. You have x minus x. What happens? What happens? X minus x. Cancels out. Then how about 5 plus 2? 7. So in this case, I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but in this case, the answer is 7 for number 2. Should we do f times g of x? Okay, now keep in mind, we have, on last week's quiz, we only had 2 functions, f of x and g of x. On this one, we have f, g, and h. So we have different, you got to pay attention to what letters are where. If you go f times g, that's going to be wrong. It's saying f times h. So you got to go f of x, the binomial, at the very least, let me write it down, the binomial 3x plus 1 times the binomial of h of x, which is x plus 5. So then you distribute and combine like terms, and you should get your correct answer. Does anybody want to see that, or move on? Move on. Number 4, f over h of x. Listen up, guys. F over h of x, not f over g of x, f over h of x. So you're going to take your f of x function, which is 3x plus 1, and you're going to put it over your h of x function, which is x plus 5. And there is nothing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, that's your answer. However, if you look at your answer over here, answer position, just like on tomorrow's quiz, you have the x cannot be. So in addition to writing this answer right here on this spot, it also says x cannot be what? And what do you need to write? X cannot be what? X could be 0 because 0 plus 5 is 5, and that's a number. X cannot be negative 5, ladies and gentlemen. So you need to put that negative 5 right in there where it says x cannot be, right? On your answer spot right there. So of course you're going to write your answer right here, but you also have to write this part that x cannot be negative 5. And we also have these composite functions, f of g of x, h of f of x, all that other good stuff. Which one? 5? 6? Nobody wants to see 5 or 6? Okay, how about, let's do 5. We're going to take the g of x function and plug it into the f of x function. So we're going to take the g of x function, which is x minus 2, and we're going to plug it into the f of x function, right into the x position of the f of x function. That's what it's saying. Take the g of x and plug it inside your f of x. So I would start by writing my f of x function, the one I'm going to plug into, 3x plus 1. And inside that x spot, inside those parentheses, we're plugging in the x minus 2. So when you distribute and combine like terms, your answer will be 3x minus 5. Because you end up with the 3x minus 6, but then plus 1. That'll give you the final answer, 3x minus 5. You guys got that? By the way, you don't have this practice quiz, so you guys should be paying attention and reviewing this at home over the video on Edmodo. So I hope you guys understand how to plug in one function into another, and it's important to identify which functions you're actually using. Right here, f and g, right here, h and f, right? So you're plugging f of x into the h of x. How about 7 or 8? Which one do you guys, or both, 7 and 8? 7 and 8. Okay, so 7 says h of g of negative 2. That's what it says, but you need to know how to work this. You work it from the inside out. So you take that negative 2 and plug it in where? Into the g. And then you take the answer that you get and plug it in where? Into the h. That's the correct notation right there. So let's take the negative 2, plug it into g. So up here, g is the middle function. So let's take the negative 2, put it right in there. What's that going to be? Negative 2 minus 2.
Negative 4.
Negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. So ladies and gentlemen, what we know so far is that this inside term is really negative 4. So you really have h, but instead of h of g of negative 2, we know that that's really negative 4. So now let's plug in negative 4 into h, and h is up here, x plus 5. Negative 4 right in there. It's going to be negative 4 plus 5. What's negative 4 plus 5?
1.
That's 1. So your final answer for number 7 is 1. You got it?
How is it negative 4?
Okay, how is it negative 4? So if you look at your three functions and you plug in negative 2 into g, not f, not h, but into g, what is negative 2 right here minus 2? What's negative 2 minus 2? Negative 4. You're not multiplying, you're combining. So negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. And then that's really negative 4, so you have h of negative 4. That means take negative 4 and plug it into h. So here's h, negative 4 plus 5, that's positive 1. That's number 7, the answer. Now number 8, that's a little bit more challenging. You have no number to plug in, but you have functions to plug in into each other. So we're going to start from the inside out. H of x, plug it into your f of x. H of x into f of x. So you might want to do this on the side. H of x into f of x. F of x is 3 parenthesis, which is 3x plus 1. That is my f of x function. But I need to take my h of x and put it inside my f of x, so that's why I set up the f of x like this. Let me plug my h of x right in there. My h of x is x plus 5, so let me put x plus 5 right in there. And of course, if you want to show your notation for this, this is really just f of h of x, right? F of h of x. So when I work this out, I'm going to get 3x plus 15 plus 1, which is 3x plus 16. Now that's barely my f of h of x. That's barely my f of h of x. So what am I trying to say here? Here's f of h of x. So I got the answer 3x plus 16. So what I need to do now is plug in that 3x plus 16 into my g function. In other words, instead of g of f of h of x, I have g of 3x plus 16. Does that make sense? So let me take my 3x plus 16 and plug it into my g function. So what's my g function? It's really x minus 2. So that's pretty easy to do. Let me take my, So let me take my g function. My g function is really x minus 2, put in parentheses with a minus 2, and let me plug in the 3x plus 16 right in there. So if I plug the 3x plus 16 right in there, I'm really going to have 3x plus 16 minus 2 because there's nothing to distribute. You don't need the parentheses. So your final answer should be 3x plus 14. How does that taste? So 3x plus 14 is the answer to number 8. Moving on to number 9, finding the inverse. So to find the inverse of number 9, you have to switch x and y. And then solve for y. So the first thing to solve for y would be to subtract 4. Subtract 4. You're going to have x minus 4 equals negative 2y. X minus 4 equals negative 2y. And then you're going to get rid of the negative 2 by dividing by negative 2 and dividing by negative 2. So that's actually a good enough answer right there, where you have y equals x minus 4 divided by negative 2. Or you could actually split the denominator, which is a better answer. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2. So either one of these is acceptable. Or you could even take this top one and move that negative sign up to the top. It would change both of them. So another acceptable answer would be y equals negative x plus 4 over positive 2. Let's jump to numbers 12, 13. Right here it says, state if the following functions are inverses of each other. Circle yes or no, but you must show your work. No work, no credit. If you don't show your work, you do not get credit, even if you have the right answer. So, just like on last week's quiz, how do you do this? Well, you need to verify that when you plug in one function into your other function, you just get x. And likewise, when you plug in the other way around, the f of x into your g of x, it also should equal x. That's how to double check and make sure that you actually do have inverse functions. So what I'm going to do is first look at this guy, f of x, and let's take the g of x and plug it inside the f of x. So I'm going to rewrite my f of x as 3/4 x, which is going to be 4x minus 8 over 3. Plug it right in there, and then don't forget about the plus 2 at the very end. So when I work this out, think about multiplying this 3/4 by this fraction. The 3's will cancel. So you really have a 1/4 times 4x minus 8, and you distribute the 1/4 times 4x minus 8. And when you go 1/4 times 4, that's really just 1x. And when you go 1/4 times negative 8, that's really a minus 2. And don't forget about the outside plus 2. And when you combine the outside minus 2 and plus 2, that cancels out, and it really does just give you x. Make sense? So that's barely half of the work that you need to show. The other half, that was barely plugging my g of x into my f of x, and I really did get x. Now you need to plug in your f of x into your g of x. So let me write my g of x function over. Zoom in, and we have 4x, but instead of x, I'm going to put parentheses minus 8 divided by 3. That's my g of x function. Let me put my f of x function right in there. So my f of x function is 3/4 x plus 2. That's what I'm going to plug in. So my f of x function is inside my g of x function, and when I distribute 4 times 3/4, it'll cancel out and you'll get 3x. And then 4 times 2 is 8, but of course you still have the minus 8 on the outside, and on the bottom you still have a 3. So of course, positive 8 minus 8 cancel out, and 3 over 3 cancels, and you truly get x. And now you could say that yes, they are inverse functions, and you showed your work for it. Now, if it wouldn't have worked, if it wouldn't have given you x, then they're not inverse functions.